The crystal trees of Ethros Prime sang their death songs as King Theron carried his dying daughter through the forest. Maya Rodriguez had been hiding in the tall blue grass near the silver stream when she heard the footsteps. She looked up to see the alien king holding a small bundle wrapped in glowing cloth. His face showed the same pain she had seen in human fathers back on Earth. Maya stood up slowly. The king had found her secret camp after 3 years of hiding. She expected guards or weapons, but Theron came alone. His daughter lay still in his arms, breathing in short gasps that sounded like whispers. The child looked so small and pale. Her pointed ears drooped against her head, and her silver hair had lost its shine. Maya could see the sickness eating away at the young princess. The same plague had killed thousands of elves across the planet. Theron spoke in broken human language that he had learned from old records. His voice cracked with desperation. The doctors of his people had tried everything. Their magic could not save her. Only Maya might have the knowledge to help. Maya took the child from the king's arms. Princess Lyrelay felt lighter than a bird. Her skin was cold, and her breathing came in tiny puffs. Maya had studied alien biology for years, but she had never seen anything like this illness. The king explained that his daughter was bonded to a dragon hatchling. The two shared a life force that connected their souls. When one suffered, the other suffered, too. The dragon was also dying somewhere in the deep caves beneath the palace. Maya asked why he had come to her instead of his own healers. Theron told her that human medicine worked differently. It did not rely on magic or ancient traditions. Humans found new ways to solve old problems. His daughter needed something his people could not give her. The king left his daughter with Maya and returned to his palace alone. Maya carried Lyrelay into her hidden shelter and placed her on a soft bed made from forest moss. The child opened her eyes for the first time. Silver pupils looked up at Maya with trust that made her heart ache. Maya began her work. She took samples of the girl's blood and studied them under her portable microscope. The cells looked wrong. They were dying from the inside, as if something was eating them alive. She had seen similar patterns in Earth diseases caused by viruses. Days passed as Maya worked to understand the sickness. She fed Lyrelay drops of water and thin soup made from forest plants. The child grew weaker, but she never complained. She would watch Maya work with those silver eyes full of quiet courage. On the 4th night, Maya heard sounds coming from the forest, a weak cry that sounded like a baby, bird in pain. She followed the sound and found a small dragon crawling through the grass. Its scales were dull black instead of bright colors. Its wings dragged behind it like broken cloth. Maya realized this must be Starfire. The dragon bonded to Lyrelay. She carried the creature back to her shelter and placed it next to the sleeping princess. As soon as they touched each other, both began to breathe easier. Maya studied them both. She discovered that their sickness came from their broken bond. The dragon should have been growing strong while feeding on the life energy of its partner. But something had damaged the connection between them. The energy flow had reversed and was draining them both. Maya remembered her training in earth medicine. She had worked with parasites and viruses that attacked the nervous system. This alien plague worked in a similar way. It blocked the natural connection between bonded pairs and turned their shared strength into shared weakness. She began to develop a treatment using human methods combined with what she knew about alien biology. She created medicines from earth plants she had grown in secret and mixed them with healing crystals from the alien forest. The treatment was dangerous. Maya had to rebuild the bond between Lyrelay and Starfire while fighting the plague at the same time. She worked for weeks, giving them small doses of medicine and monitoring their vital signs. Slowly, the princess and her dragon began to heal. Lyrelay opened her eyes more often and started to eat solid food. Starfire lifted his head and made small chirping sounds. The black color of his scales began to change to deep blue with silver edges as they grew stronger. Maya began to teach them things no elf had ever learned. She showed Lyrelay how to strengthen her body using human exercise methods. She taught her to fight with weapons instead of relying only on magic. Maya had been a soldier before becoming a scientist. and she remembered her combat. Training Starfire learned alongside his bonded partner. The dragon practiced flying in short bursts and learned to breathe controlled flames. Maya taught them to work together, using tactics she had learned in human military service. The princess was a fast learner. She absorbed everything Maya taught her and asked for more. Her silver hair grew thick and shiny. Her pale skin took on a healthy glow that seemed to come from within. When she smiled, her whole face lit up like starlight. Starfire grew larger and stronger every day. His wings became powerful enough to carry both himself and Lirelei on short flights. His scales hardened into natural armor that could deflect energy blasts. His intelligence grew beyond that of normal dragons. Maya watched them train and felt proud like a mother seeing her children succeed. But she also worried the methods she was using were forbidden by elven law. She was changing them into something their people had never seen before. News came that King Theron had died. The plague had finally claimed him too. His brother Valdris had taken the throne and was asking questions about the missing princess. Maya knew their time was running out. Valdris sent search parties into the forest looking for his niece. Maya had to move her camp deeper into the wilderness. She taught Lirelei and Starfire to survive in dangerous places. They learned to find food and water in the wild. They practiced moving silently through enemy territory. One morning Maya woke to find soldiers surrounding their camp. Prince Valdris stepped forward wearing the crown of his dead brother. His face showed anger and disgust as he looked at what his niece had become. Lirelei stood beside Starfire with her hand on her sword. Maya had made the weapon from alien metals and human design. It was lighter and sharper than traditional elven blades. The princess no longer looked like the dying child Maya had first met. She stood tall and strong with muscles earned through hard training. Valdris declared Maya a criminal for using forbidden methods on royal blood. He said Lirelei was no longer fit to be called an elf. She had been corrupted by human ideas and must be cleansed or destroyed. Maya stepped in front of her adopted daughter and told Valdris he would have to go through her first. The soldiers raised their weapons but hesitated when Starfire spread his wings and growled deep in his throat. The dragon had grown to the size of a small house, and his eyes burned with protective fury. Lirelei spoke for the first time in the presence of her uncle. Her voice was clear and strong. She told him she chose her path freely. Maya had saved her life and taught her to be strong. She would not return to the old ways that had led her. People die of plague. The confrontation ended when Starfire breathed a wall of silver flame between the royal party and Maya's group. In the confusion, the three escaped into the deep forest. Maya knew they could never go back. The princess and her dragon were now enemies of their own people. As they fled toward the dangerous outer territories, Maya felt both sadness and hope. Lirelei was no longer the frail child she had been given to heal. She had become something new and powerful. But the cost of that transformation was exile from everything she had known before. The forbidden bond between them all had grown stronger than blood or law. Maya had found a daughter, Lirelei had found a mother and teacher, and Starfire had found a family worth fighting for. Together they would face whatever dangers lay ahead in the unknown wilderness of their alien world. 3 years in the outer territories had changed everything. Lirelei and Starfire moved through the abandoned mining station like shadows. Their reputation as mercenaries had spread across 7 star systems. The mysterious warrior and her dragon, who struck from darkness and disappeared before anyone could follow. Kate Sullivan studied the security footage from her ship. The bounty on their heads was larger than anything she had ever hunted. Prince Valdris wanted his niece brought back alive, but he would pay almost as much for proof of her death. The contract was too good to pass up. Kate had been tracking them for 2 months, following rumors and sightings across the galaxy. Every job they took left the same signature: precision strikes. That combined advanced tactics with impossible timing. No wasted motion, no unnecessary violence, just clean, efficient work that got results. The footage showed Lirelei during a rescue mission on Kepler Station. She moved with fluid grace that seemed to bend the laws of physics. Her sword cut through energy shields like they were made of paper. Starfire appeared behind enemy positions, breathing controlled bursts of flame that disabled weapons without killing the soldiers holding them. Kate paused. The recording and zoomed in on the princess face. Lorelei had grown into a beautiful young woman, but her eyes held depths that seemed older than her years. Scars covered her arms and neck, but they glowed with soft silver light instead of looking like normal wounds. The dragon had grown massive. His scales now shifted color from deep blue to silver depending on the light. He moved with intelligence that went beyond animal instinct. When Lorelei gave signals, he responded instantly, as if they shared the same mind. Kate had fought alongside humans who claimed to have special bonds with their partners. But this was something different. The princess and dragon moved as one being split into two bodies. Their timing was perfect because they shared the same thoughts and reactions. The next sighting came from a space station near the Rim territories. Lorelei and Starfire had been hired to break up a slave trading ring. Kate set course immediately. This would be her chance to observe them in action before making her move. She arrived at the station just as chaos erupted. Emergency lights flashed red while alarms screamed warnings about hull breaches. Kate watched from her cloaked ship as Starfire tore through the outer defenses. The dragon had learned to fight in zero gravity, using his wings to change direction in impossible ways. Lorelei entered through the breach wearing armor that looked like it had been grown rather than made. The suit moved with her body like a second skin and seemed to absorb energy blasts instead of deflecting them. She carried two swords now, both glowing with the same inner light as her scars. The slave traders never had a chance. They were prepared to fight normal pirates, not a warrior who could predict their moves before they made them. Lorelei disabled their weapons and freed the prisoners while Starfire held their ships in place with controlled bursts of flame. Kate found herself impressed despite her professional detachment. The princess fought like someone who had learned from multiple species and combined their best techniques. Her style was uniquely her own, but Kate could see influences from human military training. After the rescue, Lorelei and Starfire disappeared again. Kate tried to follow but lost their trail in an asteroid field. She was beginning to understand why no one had been able to capture them. They knew the outer territories better than anyone, and had allies in places most people had never heard of. The breakthrough came when Kate intercepted a communication from Valdris to his military commanders. The prince was growing desperate. His latest orders authorized extreme measures to bring his niece home. The royal fleet was being mobilized for a full-scale hunt. Kate realized she was no longer the only one tracking her quarry. Valdris had hired other bounty hunters and was using military resources to corner Lorelei and Starfire. Kate had to move fast before someone else claimed her prize. She found them on a dead world that orbited a dying star. The planet had been stripped of resources decades ago and abandoned. Kate wondered why they had chosen such a desolate hiding place until she saw the energy readings coming from deep underground. Ancient ruins covered the surface, showing signs of a civilization that had vanished long before any of the current galactic races had achieved spaceflight. The architecture was strange, with curves and angles that hurt to look at directly. Kate felt uneasy, just walking among the empty buildings. She tracked Lorelei and Starfire to a massive structure at the center of the ruins. The building seemed to absorb light instead of reflecting it. Kate approached carefully with her weapons ready. She had captured dozens of dangerous criminals, but something about this place made her skin crawl. Inside the structure, Kate found them standing before a wall, covered with symbols that seemed to move when she was not looking directly at them. Lorelei was translating the writing while Starfire stood guard. His scales had turned completely black and his eyes glowed with silver fire. The princess spoke without turning around. She had known Kate was following them for days. The trap had been set and sprung, but not in the way Kate expected. Lorelei was not trying to escape or fight. She was trying to warn her pursuer about something much more dangerous. Kate kept her weapon ready, but listened as Lorelei explained what they had discovered. The ruins belonged to a race called the Shadowkin who had been banished from this dimension long ago. The symbols on the wall told the story of their defeat and imprisonment, but something had changed. The barriers holding the Shadowkin were weakening. Energy signatures matching theirs had been detected in deep space moving toward inhabited worlds. The princess and her dragon had been investigating these signs while taking mercenary jobs to fund their research. Kate demanded to know why this mattered to her. Lorelei turned around and Kate saw fear in those silver eyes for the first time. The princess explained that the Shadowkin fed on light itself. They consumed the life force of living beings and left nothing behind but empty husks. The plague that had nearly killed Lorelei as a child had been their advance weapon sent to weaken potential resistance. The princess had survived because her human training had created immunities the Shadowkin had not expected. Her bond with Starfire had evolved into something they feared. Kate realized the scope of what she was hearing. This was not about bounty hunting or royal politics anymore. The princess was trying to prevent an invasion that could destroy entire star systems. The mercenary jobs and reputation building had been cover for a much larger mission. Before Kate could decide how to respond, the structure around them began to shake. Starfire roared a warning that echoed off the ancient walls. Something was coming through the darkness between dimensions. The Shadowkin had found them. Kate saw her first Shadowkin as it materialized from nothing. The creature looked like a hole in reality, shaped roughly like a person. It moved without making sound, and left trails of absolute darkness wherever it stepped. Kate fired her energy weapon, but the blasts passed through it without effect. Lorelei drew her swords and they blazed with silver light. The Shadowkin recoiled from the illumination, but did not retreat. More of the creatures appeared around them. Kate found herself fighting beside her former quarry against enemies that seemed impossible to defeat. Starfire breathed flames that burned silver instead of orange. The fire actually damaged the Shadowkin, making them shriek with voices like breaking glass. The dragon had grown beyond anything in recorded biology. His fire now came from the same source as his bonded partner's glowing scars. The battle was chaotic and terrifying. Kate had faced many dangerous opponents, but these creatures existed, partially outside normal space. They could appear and disappear at will, and their touch drained energy from anything they contacted. Lorelei fought with techniques that defied physics. She moved through space as if gravity were optional, and her swords cut through dimensions to strike enemies that should have been untouchable. Kate realized the princess had become something beyond normal understanding. The fight ended when Lorelei and Starfire combined their power in a way Kate had never seen. The dragon breathed silver flame while the princess channeled it through her weapons. The light pushed back the darkness and forced the Shadowkin to retreat to whatever realm they came from. In the aftermath, Kate found herself staring at two beings who were no longer entirely from her reality. Lorelei and Starfire stood together surrounded by fading silver light. Their eyes held depths that spoke of experiences beyond mortal comprehension. Kate made her choice. She activated her communicator and sent a coded message to Prince Valdris. The message contained false coordinates and a report that her quarry had been killed in an explosion. The bounty hunter had officially failed her mission. Lorelei smiled and thanked Kate for the decision. Kate realized she had just joined something much more important than a hunt for royal fugitives. The three women now stood together against a threat that could consume the galaxy if left unchecked. They left the dead world together with Kate providing transportation in her ship. Maya Rodriguez was waiting at the rendezvous point with information that would change everything. Kate had thought she was hunting criminals, but had instead found the first line of defense against invasion from beyond the stars. Maya Rodriguez had been hiding in the research station for months, surrounded by data that painted a terrifying picture. The plague that nearly killed Lorelei had been engineered. The Shadowkin had created it as a weapon to weaken their enemies. Before the main invasion began, Kate Sullivan listened to the briefing while watching Lorelei train with Starfire in the station hangar. The princess moved through combat forms that seemed to bend reality around her. The dragon matched every movement, as if they were dancing to music. Only they could hear. Maya explained how she had discovered the truth. Hidden in the plague virus were genetic markers that did not belong to any known disease. The patterns matched energy signatures found in the ancient Shadowkin ruins. The whole outbreak had been a test to see how different species would respond to their power. But something had gone wrong with their plan. Lyralei's survival and transformation had created an immunity they had not expected. Her bond with Starfire had evolved beyond anything in recorded history. She had become what ancient texts called a void walker. Kate asked what that meant. Maya pulled up holographic displays showing dimensional readings taken from around Lyrelai and Starfire. The two existed partially in normal space and partially in the void between realities. They could access power sources that should have been impossible to reach. The transformation was still continuing. Every time Lyrelai used her abilities, she became less bound by the physical laws that govern normal beings. Starfire was growing in intelligence and size beyond what any dragon species had ever achieved. Their shared consciousness was expanding into areas that touched other dimensions. Maya had been studying the process while staying hidden from Prince Valdris and his search parties. She had discovered that the transformation could be guided and controlled with the right techniques. The princess could learn to manage her new abilities, instead of being consumed by them, but there were risks. The more power Lyrelai accessed, the further she moved away from her original nature. Each use of her Void Walker abilities changed her in ways that might not be reversible. Maya worried that her adopted daughter was becoming something that could no longer connect with normal people. Kate reviewed the evidence and realized the scope of the conspiracy. Prince Valdris had not been searching for his niece out of family loyalty. He had been in secret communication with advanced scouts from the Shadowkin realm. The prince planned to trade Lyrelai for power over the neighboring star systems. The Shadowkin had been playing Valdris like a fool. They had no intention of sharing power with anyone. Their plan was to use Lyrelai as a conduit to drain all light from the galaxy, starting with her homeworld of Ethros Prime. The prince would be among the first to die once they had what they needed. Maya showed them recordings intercepted. From Royal Communications, Valdris had been providing information about his niece's abilities and locations to beings he thought were potential allies. The fool had no idea he was helping plan his own destruction. Lyrelai entered the briefing room. After finishing her training session, Starfire had grown too large to fit inside the station, but his presence could be felt through their bond. The princess listened to the evidence against her uncle without showing emotion on her face. Kate watched. Lyrelai processed the betrayal. The young woman had already been exiled from her people and hunted across the galaxy. Now she learned that her own family was actively working to deliver her to cosmic horror. The pain in those silver eyes was carefully hidden but still visible. Maya tried to offer comfort, but Lyrelai pulled away. She was struggling with the knowledge that she was becoming something inhuman. Every day brought new abilities that separated her further from the people she was fighting to protect. The isolation was eating at her soul. Starfire sensed his bonded partner's distress and pressed his massive head against the station window. Lyrelai placed her hand on the glass and drew strength from their connection. The dragon's intelligence had grown to match her own, and he understood her internal conflict. Kate suggested they needed more information about Valdris and his dealings with the Shadowkin. Maya had been monitoring communications, but they needed to infiltrate the royal palace. Directly, Kate volunteered to go undercover, using her reputation as a failed bounty hunter. The plan was dangerous but necessary. Kate would approach Valdris claiming to have new information about Lyrelai's location. She would offer her services as a hunter who knew her quarry's tactics better than anyone. The prince would likely accept her help, given his desperation to capture his niece. Maya would continue her research into Void Walker abilities while monitoring communications from the station. Lyrelai and Starfire would investigate other ancient sites looking for more information about the original war with the Shadowkin. Before they separated, Lyrelai pulled Kate aside and thanked her for choosing to help, instead of collecting the bounty. Kate realized the princess was saying goodbye. She expected this mission to be her last, either because she would die fighting or because her transformation would be complete. Kate promised to return with the information they needed. She had spent her career hunting people, but now she was part of something bigger. The fate of the galaxy depended on their small group of outcasts working together against impossible odds. The infiltration went better than expected. Kate arrived at the royal palace. Claiming her ship had been damaged while tracking the Princess, Valdris welcomed her eagerly and immediately began sharing classified information about his search efforts. Kate learned that the prince had been receiving visits from beings he called his advisors. They appeared only in darkened rooms and spoke in voices that hurt to hear directly. Kate recognized the descriptions as Shadowkin scouts preparing for the main invasion. Valdris showed Kate recordings of Lyraleigh's recent activities. The prince had no idea how powerful his niece had become. He still thought of her as the sickly child who had been given to a human for healing. Kate realized he was completely unprepared for what Lyralee could do now. The real breakthrough came when Kate discovered the timeline for the Shadowkin invasion. They planned to begin their assault within days using energy readings from Lyralee to locate their primary targets. The princess had become a beacon that would guide their forces to inhabited worlds. Kate managed to steal copies of the communications and escape the palace before her cover was blown. She rendezvoused with Maya at the research station with devastating news. The invasion was starting whether they were ready or not. Maya had made her own discoveries while Kate was gone. Her research into ancient texts had revealed that there were other Voidwalker pairs hidden throughout the galaxy. The original war against the Shadowkin had been fought by an alliance of transformed warriors and their bonded companions, but most of the pairs had been killed or had gone into deep hiding after the war ended. The few that remained were scattered across distant worlds and might not even remember their true nature. Maya estimated there could be as many as 12 pairs still alive. Lyralee returned from her own mission with Starfire, bringing news that confirmed Maya's research. They had found another ancient battlefield where the energy signatures matched those of other Voidwalkers. The princess could sense them across vast distances, but reaching them would be dangerous. Kate realized they were facing an impossible task. They needed to locate and awaken the other Voidwalker pairs while avoiding the Shadowkin, scouts who were already arriving in normal space. The enemy had superior numbers and the element of surprise, but they also had advantages the Shadowkin did not expect. Lyralee had been trained using human tactics that emphasized adaptability and unconventional solutions. Her bond with Starfire was stronger than the original pairs because it had been forged through survival rather than tradition. Maya began preparing for the final phase of their mission. She would use the research station to coordinate communications while Kate and Lyralee searched for the other pairs. The three women had become a family bound by purpose rather than blood. Lyralee stood with her hand on Starfire's neck as they planned their desperate gamble. The dragon had grown wise enough to understand the stakes. They were no longer fighting for personal freedom or revenge. They were fighting to preserve light itself in a universe threatened by absolute darkness. The first phase would begin immediately. Kate would use her contacts to spread warnings about the coming invasion, while Lyralee and Starfire began their search for the hidden void. Walker's time was running out, and their small rebellion was about to become the last hope for countless innocent lives across the galaxy. The invasion began at dawn on 17 different worlds simultaneously. Shadowkin fleets emerged from the void between dimensions like wounds opening in space itself. They consumed the light of stars and left darkness spreading across entire systems. Lyralee felt each attack through her connection to the cosmic forces that bound reality together. Every world that fell sent waves of agony through her enhanced senses. Starfire shared her pain as their bond carried the suffering of billions of dying beings. Kate Sullivan stood in the command center of the resistance base they had established on a hidden asteroid. The screens showed reports flooding in from across the galaxy. Traditional weapons proved useless against the Shadowkin who existed partially outside normal physics. Maya Rodriguez worked frantically at her research station, analyzing the energy patterns of the invasion. She had discovered something crucial about the enemy attacks. They were not random strikes but carefully planned moves. In a larger strategy, the Shadowkin were using the dimensional rifts created by their arrival to map the location of every Voidwalker pair in the galaxy. Each attack revealed more information about their hidden enemies. Lyralee and Starfire had become visible to them simply by existing. Maya explained her findings to the desperate alliance of alien races that had formed around their small rebellion. Different species that had been enemies for generations were now working together against the cosmic threat. None of their traditional defenses mattered against beings that fed on light itself. Kate had used her military experience to organize the alliance into something resembling a fighting force. but she knew they were buying time, rather than achieving victory. Only the Voidwalkers could actually harm the Shadowkin, and most of them remained hidden or lost. Lyreley returned from her latest search mission with mixed news. She had found 3 more Voidwalker pairs, but 2 of them had refused to join the fight they had hidden for so long that they no longer remembered their purpose. 1 pair had gone completely insane from isolation. The awakened pairs that did join them were struggling with powers they had not used in centuries. Their bonds with their dragon companions had weakened over time, making them less effective than they should be. Lyreley had to train them while fighting a war across multiple dimensions. Starfire underwent his most dramatic transformation. During this period, the massive dragon began growing at an accelerated rate until he reached the size of a small starship. His scales became crystalline and started channeling cosmic energy directly from the void between worlds. The change was painful for both Starfire and Lyreley as their shared consciousness expanded to accommodate his new abilities. The dragon began speaking in ancient languages that predated recorded history. His intelligence grew beyond anything they had experienced before. Maya made a shocking revelation during one of their planning sessions. She had not been entirely honest about her background on Earth. She was not just a xenobiologist who had crashed on Ethros Prime years ago. Maya had been part of a secret human military project studying interdimensional phenomena. Her ship had been deliberately sent to find and study potential Voidwalker candidates. The human government had detected strange energy signatures across the galaxy and wanted to understand what they meant. Maya's training of Lyreley had been guided by classified protocols designed to create super soldiers. Kate felt betrayed by this news, but Maya explained that her feelings for Lyreley had become genuine over time. The mission parameters had changed when she fell in love with the dying child she was supposed to study. Maya had chosen to become a real mother instead of remaining a spy. Lyreley absorbed this information without anger. She had always known there was more to Maya's story. The important thing was that her adopted mother had saved her life and taught her to be strong. The original reasons no longer mattered. The revelation about Maya's background provided crucial intelligence about human capabilities. The Resistance gained access to advanced technology and dimensional research that had been classified for decades. Earth had been preparing for this war longer than anyone realized, but the intelligence came with a price. Human military forces were already engaged in fighting Shadowkin attacks on Earth colonies. The homeworld was under siege and might not survive long enough to provide meaningful support. Kate established communication with human fleet commanders and learned the scope of the disaster. Shadowkin had struck at the heart of galactic civilization, targeting the most populated and important worlds. First, billions had already died and entire species faced extinction. Lyreley made the decision to accelerate her own transformation regardless of the personal cost. She began using her Voidwalker abilities at maximum power, accepting that each use pushed her further from her original humanity. The galaxy needed her at full strength, even if it meant losing herself. Starfire supported her choice by undergoing his own acceleration. The dragon's crystalline scales began generating energy fields that could affect reality on a fundamental level. He learned to manipulate gravity and phase through solid matter, while carrying Lyreley into impossible battles. The other void. Walker pairs watched in amazement and horror as Lyreley and Starfire pushed beyond the limits that had constrained their predecessors. The princess was becoming something unprecedented even in the ancient texts that described the original war. Maya monitored the transformation. With growing concern, Lyreley was burning through her mortal essence to fuel abilities that no single being should possess. The process might save the galaxy, but it was definitely killing the young woman Maya had raised as a daughter. Kate organized evacuation efforts for civilian populations while coordinating military strikes that could support the Voidwalker operations. Traditional forces could not defeat the Shadowkin, but they could provide distractions and rescue survivors from attacked worlds. The Resistance base became a symbol of hope for beings across the galaxy. Reports spread about the mysterious human-raised princess and her cosmic dragon, who could actually fight the invaders on equal terms. Lyreley had become a legend that inspired others to keep fighting, but the personal cost of her transformation was becoming visible. Lyreley's silver hair had turned completely white, and her skin had begun glowing. with the same inner light as her scars. She was becoming less solid and more energy, with each passing day. Starfire was changing as well. The dragon's physical form was becoming optional as he learned to exist as pure consciousness inhabiting crystalline energy. The bond between him and Lyrelei was evolving beyond anything that had ever existed before. Maya realized they were witnessing the birth of a new form of life. Lyrelei and Starfire were transcending their original natures to become something that could exist across multiple dimensions simultaneously. They were becoming guardians suited to fight cosmic-level threats. The breakthrough came when Lyrelei successfully contacted all remaining Voidwalker pairs across the galaxy through direct mental communication. Her consciousness had expanded enough to reach them regardless of distance. The hidden warriors finally understood what was at stake. Kate watched 12 pairs of ancient warriors and their dragon companions converge on the resistance base. Each pair was unique, reflecting the different species and cultures they had originally come from, but all of them shared the same cosmic fire that burned in Lyrelei's eyes. The final phase of the war was about to begin. The Shadowkin had revealed their true numbers and were preparing for an assault on the core worlds of galactic civilization. But the Void Walkers were finally united and ready to make their stand. Lyrelei stood before the assembled warriors, knowing this might be the last time she could speak as anything resembling her original self. The transformation was almost complete, and she could feel her mortal identity dissolving into something larger and more terrible. Maya and Kate flanked her as she addressed the alliance of species that had gathered to make their final stand. The three women had become symbols of different kinds of strength. Scientific knowledge, military leadership, and transcendent power, working together against the darkness. The invasion of the core worlds would begin within hours, and the outcome would determine whether light or darkness ruled the galaxy. Lyrelei looked at Maya and Kate, knowing she might not recognize them as individuals much longer. Her expanded consciousness was already struggling to maintain personal connections, but the mission was clear, and the stakes could not be higher. The Void Walkers would make their stand against the Shadowkin in a battle that would span multiple dimensions and determine the fate of all life in the universe. The battle for Ethros Prime began when reality itself started tearing apart around the planet. Shadowkin fleets emerged from dimensional rifts, like living nightmares given form. They blotted out the light of stars and left trails of absolute darkness. Across space, Lyrelei led 12 pairs of Voidwalkers into combat that transcended normal understanding of warfare. Each pair represented a different aspect of cosmic balance. Some channeled stellar fire, while others manipulated gravity or phased through matter itself. Kate Sullivan coordinated the conventional forces from her command ship, knowing that traditional weapons were useless against the enemy. But the regular military could evacuate civilians and provide support for the Voidwalker operations. Their courage mattered even if their weapons did not. Maya Rodriguez monitored the battle from the research station, her instruments tracking energy patterns that hurt to look at directly. The Shadowkin were trying to open a permanent rift to their dimension using Ethros Prime as an anchor point. Starfire had grown beyond physical limitations, his crystalline form shifting between solid matter and pure energy as needed. He moved through space like a living constellation, carrying Lyrelei into battles that spanned multiple realities simultaneously. The Voidwalker pairs fought with abilities that defied description. One team could fold space to appear behind enemy formations, while another channeled the gravitational force of collapsed stars. Each partnership was unique, but all burned with the same cosmic fire. But the Shadowkin had prepared for this confrontation. They had spent eons studying their ancient enemies and had developed new strategies. Prince Valdris had been more than just a foolish ally. He had been transformed into something that could drain Voidwalker energy directly. Lyrelei confronted her uncle above the burning remains of the royal palace. Valdris had become a shadow wraith whose touch could corrupt the light that powered her abilities. The transformation had driven him insane, but left him cunning enough to beg for death while trying to kill her. The battle between niece and uncle was heartbreaking to witness. Valdris flickered between his original personality and the monster the Shadowkin had made him. He pleaded with Lyrelei to end his suffering while the corruption forced him to attack with powers that could tear holes in reality. Lyrelei finally granted his request by channeling pure light through her blade. The weapon that Maya had forged years ago from alien metals and human engineering burned through the shadow corruption and freed Valdris from his torment. His last words were thanks for the mercy, but the personal victory came at a terrible cost. The Shadowkin used the distraction to begin opening their permanent rift. The tear in space grew larger with each passing moment, threatening to flood the galaxy with beings that existed beyond the reach of light. Maya detected the dimensional breach from her research station and realized the scope of the disaster. The rift would keep growing until it consumed entire star systems. The Shadowkin were not just invading, they were trying to merge their realm of absolute darkness. With normal space, Kate received evacuation reports showing that billions of beings were fleeing the affected sectors. But there was nowhere to run if the rift continued expanding. The darkness would eventually reach every inhabited world in the Cow. Galaxy Lyrelei understood what had to be done. She gathered the surviving Voidwalker pairs around the dimensional breach and explained the only solution they would have to seal the rift from inside, using their combined life force as the binding energy. The other warriors accepted the sacrifice without hesitation. They had lived in hiding for centuries while the galaxy faced smaller threats. Now they had the chance to fulfill their original purpose, even if it cost them everything. Starfire merged completely with Lyrelei as they prepared for the final confrontation. The dragon's consciousness joined with hers in a union that transcended individual identity. They became a single being of pure will, powered by love and determination. The assault on the rift required the Voidwalkers to enter the Shadowkin dimension, where the laws of physics worked differently. Light itself was a weapon there, but using it consumed the essence of whoever channeled it. Lyrelei led the charge into absolute darkness, her transformed body blazing like a star as she cut through enemies that should not have been able to exist. The other pairs followed, creating a corridor of light through the heart of the Shadow Realm. The Shadowkin threw everything they had at the intruders. Ancient beings that had fed on the death of universes emerged from the deepest parts of their realm. But the Voidwalkers had been forged in battles against cosmic horror, and they did not break. Maya watched from the research station as the energy readings from inside the rift went beyond anything her instruments could measure. The dimensional breach was beginning to collapse, but the process was consuming the warriors who were sealing it. Kate coordinated the final evacuation efforts as space around Ethros Prime became increasingly unstable. The conventional forces could do nothing to help the Voidwalkers, but they could ensure that their sacrifice would not be wasted. Inside the shadow dimension, Lyrelei felt her individual identity dissolving as she channeled more power than any mortal being should be able to contain. But instead of dying, she began transforming into something that could exist across multiple realities. Starfire underwent the same metamorphosis, his dragon form becoming a pattern of living light that could manifest anywhere the darkness threatened. The bond between them became the foundation for a new kind of existence that transcended physical limitations. The other Voidwalker pairs followed, them into transcendence, becoming guardians who could watch over the galaxy from dimensions beyond normal space. Their individual personalities merged into a collective consciousness dedicated to protecting life from cosmic threats. Maya felt the moment when Lyrelei ceased to exist as a separate being. The readings from her instruments showed the transformation from matter to energy to something beyond both. The daughter she had raised was becoming a force of nature. Kate watched from the command deck as brilliant light erupted from the collapsing rift. The Shadowkin dimension was being sealed, but the energy release was visible across half the galaxy. Lyrelei and Starfire had become a beacon that would guide others to safety. War ended when the rift finally collapsed, taking the Shadowkin fleet with it. The invaders were trapped in their own realm while the barriers that held them were reinforced by the transformed Voidwalkers. Reality stabilized around the galaxy as normal physics reasserted themselves, but the victory came with profound loss. Maya and Kate stood together on the observation deck of the research station, looking out at stars that had been saved by the sacrifice of those they loved. Lyrelei and Starfire were gone, but their light continued to shine. Reports began coming in from across the galaxy of strange phenomena that helped beings in danger. Pilots lost in space spoke of seeing a shining dragon and its rider appearing to guide them. To safety ships under attack found their weapons suddenly becoming more effective against dark creatures. Maya established an academy on the ruins of Ethros Prime where humans and aliens could learn to fight cosmic threats together. She taught the methods she had developed while raising Lirelai, but adapted them for students who would remain mortal. Kate became the first director of the Galactic Defense Corps, organizing conventional forces to support future Voidwalker candidates. The universe had been saved once, but eternal vigilance would be needed to keep the darkness from returning. 20 years passed before Maya and Kate began to understand what Lirelai and Starfire had truly become. They existed now as guardians who could manifest anywhere light was threatened. Their consciousness spanned dimensions, but their love for the people they protected remained constant. The Academy graduated its first class of human-alien partnership teams trained in the techniques that had once saved a dying princess. Each new generation learned that true strength came not from individual power, but from bonds forged through shared sacrifice. Kate often stood in the memorial garden they had built for the original Voidwalkers, watching new students train with their dragon companions. The partnerships would never be as deep as what Lirelai and Starfire had shared, but they carried the same spirit of protection. Maya continued her research into dimensional physics, but focused now on understanding rather than creating transcendence. The galaxy had been saved by beings who chose to become something beyond mortality. Their example inspired others to reach for greatness. Sometimes on clear nights when the stars shone brightest, Maya and Kate would see flashes of silver light dancing between the constellations. They knew their daughter and her dragon were still watching over the galaxy. They had died to protect. The bonds of family had transcended death itself, proving that love could survive any transformation Maya had gained. A daughter Kate had found a cause worth fighting for, and Lirelai had discovered that becoming something greater than herself was the ultimate expression of who she had always been. The light that Lirelai and Starfire had become would burn forever across the cosmos, ensuring that darkness would never again threaten the innocent. Their story had ended, but their protection would continue as long as stars shone in the void.